Welcome to a special edition of the All 32 Pod, Tuesday, January 21st. We just recorded one yesterday, played that out to you, but things are happening in the world of the National Football League, particularly with the two teams that we are frequently associated with, the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. I'm Mike Giardi, he's Will Parkinson. As always, this show brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network, and Game Time, best tickets, best prices to get you in to see any event you want to see. We'll get into where the Jets are currently with their head coach and potentially their general manager. But before that, the news has come out. Josh McDaniels will be the next offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. This will make the third time that McDaniels has been the franchise's OC. A couple different stints under Bill Belichick, of course, sandwiched in between head coaching jobs with the Denver Broncos and now the Las Vegas Raiders. This always seemed like the way it was going to go. I was a little hesitant yesterday just because we hadn't heard anything yet about an interview, but that interview happened and the process moved quickly. And Will, I think as I told you back when we started this thing, this is something that the Krafts wanted. They're very comfortable with Josh. They look at Josh's resume and say, well, you know what? He may not have worked as a head coach, but he sure as hell worked as an offensive coordinator. And I think a lot of people in Foxboro and around the team and in the facility still say, boy, is it a coincidence that our offense has sucked since he walked out the building the last time in 2021 after he, got as much as he possibly could out of Mac Jones in that rookie season. And Mac's certainly not been the same player. And now looks like he's destined to be a backup. And they have not managed to score over 20 points in any of the seasons since. So I think there's comfort there from an ownership standpoint. And look, Mike Vrabel knows him, has coached against him. And obviously there's plenty of people around here who still are very fond of Josh. So I don't think he was lacking any good recommendations within the office.
Yeah, so I think the hire makes sense. I think it was the expected hire. I don't think this is, frankly, a surprise. I think it would have been a surprise if they went the unknown direction. The one thing I would say that I have my only reservation, in this, and I don't think it's a major one by any means, is just I do feel like a little bit of this is becoming a little more kind of running back some of the old band just a little bit. Not entirely. Yeah. And I'm not saying that like we're talking, some of the bad band members. We're talking with somebody who's been successful here. And there's no doubt that Josh probably will do a pretty at least half decent job with Drake May. I don't think he's the most exciting candidate. I think it's financially helpful for Vrabel to not have to spend big money on an offensive assistant because the Raiders are going to pay Josh McDaniels until he's the Patriots OC for the 28th time in 2087. But I just do worry a little bit. And you talk to some people around the Patriots. You're obviously much more connected in that building than I am. But the people I know that have been around that team for the last 6-7 years, you worry it becomes a bit of an echo chamber at times. And I think it has become a bit of an echo chamber is where they've run into issues, previous regimes. I just hope that doesn't become the case here with Vrabel. I know he wants continuity. I know he wants all these things, which is great. But someone's got to be able to challenge him. And I just hope that Josh, we know will challenge somebody. I hope he's willing to do that with Mike. That would be my only concern. Otherwise, this hire it's seamless.
It's interesting because I think some of the other people that he talked to, Grant Udinski, who's the assistant quarterbacks coach in Minnesota, who happens to be 28, by the way, just make me feel bad about my life when I was 28 years old, not accomplishing anything quite like being interviewed for an offensive coordinator position. And then Thomas Brown, Marcus Brady, there was sort of that McVay West Coast tree. And I think a lot of people, and we see it around the league, right? The general consensus is that's the most difficult offense to defend. Is Josh going to run that here? Because, Josh, I think, is open to a lot of different ideas, but he obviously comes from the Earhart-Perkins school of offense, and that's what he has run for a million years. And look, there have been modifications. I think one of the things that probably doesn't get talked enough about with Josh is his willingness and ability to adapt to personnel. I think when they've had different pieces, he's, the two tight end thing became a Gronk, Hernandez, like how do you make that work? He made it work. In fact, he made it into something that a lot of people try to duplicate. Obviously, a lot of connection with the small slot guy, which if I'm Pop Douglas, even though I don't know about his football IQ as compared to some of the guys that previously have played that position under McDaniels. Like, I'd be pretty excited about the opportunity that I could get here where instead of, boy, they have to manufacture touches for me, they're in the offense if that's the offense he chooses to run. So I'm curious to see how Josh has sort of evolved in his year off. I know he's consulted for a bunch of different teams, and he's watched a ton of different tape from a lot of different offenses and been to a few different places too to sort of pick people's brains. And I'm curious to see what he comes with. But I think obviously the notion, and you brought it up, he's under contract with the Raiders. They're paying him forever, and it doesn't feel based on his two failed experiences as head coach, where he didn't get out of the second year on either one of them, that he's going to be a head coach anytime soon, if ever again.
Like, the one thing I wanted to say with Josh is that I do think this is a huge benefit, and the Patriots can get offensive line even half right. He's going to run the football a lot, and teams don't defend the run anymore. They just don't. They're not good against the run. There's very few teams that are. We talked a lot last year about Drake May, and it felt like, well, I think Alex Van Pelt did some nice things fundamentals-wise with Drake May and some little tweaks here and there. The one thing I think my criticism, and I know you had the same one, and Alex, to his credit, kind of said as much, they threw the ball way too much. I mean, way too much. And I'm not saying to this archaic ground and pound offense, but a little bit. Like, it would be nice to be like, hey, Drake May, can you 5 runs, 25 throws? You touch the ball 30 times every play, but you 30 times, Ramondre 18 times. We're going to draft another back, and this is a great running back class. We're going to draft a guy in round 3 or round 4. He's going to touch the ball 6 to 8 times. He's going to be more of a receiving back. Polk 6 targets, inevitably Tyreek or Debo or A.J. Brown or whoever the likely guy that's probably not ideal long-term, that whole thing. I think, that's to me, like, I think this is a good hire. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think this wows you, but I think it makes sense. Like, I think that's the end of the day. It's what you're looking for. It makes sense.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's 6:04 here on Tuesday night. Nothing official from the team yet. So that could just be hammering out contractual details again. And there's some complexities to that based on what's in his Raiders contract and offsets and those sorts of things. The ability to have a coordinator that's going to be here for a while, which is what everybody is worried about, right? If you hire a CEO type coach, or if you hire a defensive minded coach, if the offensive guy comes in and has success, those are the ones that people seem to pluck. And obviously, the most recent example, Ben Johnson, right? Gets the job with Chicago, was the hot coordinator, and could have had a job last year as well, and waited until this cycle to get the Bears job. So the question is, if you hire that young up and coming offensive coordinator, you risk losing him. With Josh and the stability in his roots here, he still lives here, so that's that's all set up. His relationship with May is going to be fascinating, and I did a story last week in which someone said to me, they ought to check with Drake because Alex Van Pelt, the previous offensive coordinator, has a soft touch around his quarterbacks. They love playing for him and whatever, but it's his personality. He's a kind of a softer touch. And someone said to me, well, Josh can be abrasive, which is funny because then immediately I got responses to that from people in the know who know Josh. And we're like, Josh isn't abrasive. And I'm like, I didn't say he was. That was just one of the things that was told to me. What I do know is that Josh will coach Drake hard. And if you're worth anything in this sport, if you want to be great, then you want that. So that should work out. And I think, to my point about adapting to personnel, I think it's also adapting to now having a bit more of a mobile quarterback. And I was thinking about, the quarterbacks that he helped develop. And obviously Tom was Tom, and he has a role in that, but Tom is the greatest ever for a million and one reasons. And Josh certainly gets an assist there, but that's Tom. But then Matt Castle in 2008, Brady goes down in the first quarter of the first game of the season, and they end up winning double-digit games. Didn't beat anybody of significance, but they did it. And Castle played pretty well and ended up, getting franchised, traded to Kansas City for a second-round pick with Mike Vrabel thrown in on that deal. So he helped get Matt Castle developed and paid. He got Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett developed and capable of playing. When Brady had the 4-game suspension for Deflategate, Jimmy started the world on fire, then got hurt against Miami. Brissett came in and looked pretty cool. I'm not sure that it necessarily ever got much better for Jacoby, but in that moment, he was able to do what they want. And then 2020, when the Patriots punted on the season, Brady's gone to Tampa. It's the COVID year. They signed Cam Newton in July. I believe it was July, like right around July 4th. And, they'd been talking to him, so I think he had a playbook already in hand. That wasn't a good football team. That was a 7-9 football team, and two of those wins came against the Jets, who were particularly wretched that year. But there were moments where you're like, he's calling a game for a quarterback who can't throw, and they're still competitive in some of these games. You can still see his process, and sort of like he's setting things up and he's doing some things. And if his quarterback actually could throw it better, maybe they win another game or two there. And then obviously what he did with Mac. And again, some of that was smoke and mirrors. There was that 7-game stretch where they literally played backup quarterbacks pretty much every week. But nonetheless, they were 9-3, I think, or 9-4, 9-3, maybe coming out of the bye, whatever it was, before it sort of fell off and they got, whooped in the first round of the playoffs in Buffalo. But he had people believing here that you could win with Mac Jones. Now, that didn't turn out to be true in 2022 and 2023 when McDaniels left for Vegas, but those are certainly things that you can hang your hat on. And I just think people are like, well, is he too conservative, and is this too safe of a hire? And I think when you start looking at the names that are out there and the people that they could have talked to, and it seems like Kubiak is still probably the odds-on favorite to get the Seattle job as the OC.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like, Will, that there was anyone who necessarily blew you away and said like, oh, we have to have that guy. That wasn't the case, especially when you go with the defensive coach. So I think when people say it's safe, I think it's better than safe. Like, I don't think it's to cross sports. I don't think it's a single. I think it's a double with the potential for triple, depending on how he.
I don't think you're hitting a home run, but I don't think that I think your floor is raised significantly. The entirety of this Patriots offseason has been raising their floor back to what we were used to, which is we are going to be competitive every year. We're going to rebuild this culture. We're going to get a little bit of the stink out, although we've only seen one or two, folks, maybe, a lot of these regimes. But I think it's like, hey, can we get back to our floor being 9 wins?
Yep.
And not our floor being 3 wins. And our ceiling maybe is much higher, and I think they're going to need to add quite a bit to get to that point. But at least for right now, it's like, hey, can we at least are we playing, not to steal a Jets phrase here, which is the worst, but are we playing meaningful games after Thanksgiving? Like, they have not played meaningful games after Thanksgiving in a little bit of time now. And it's like this fan base is used to every year, us being very much a part of it. So, yeah, I would say this is I think this is, like you said, maybe a double. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
No, absolutely. It should be embraced based on, again, how it's gone for the last 3 seasons offensively and really, 4 of the last 5. Let's move on to the Jets. Although quickly, I do want to mention our sponsors as we're giving them a bonus this week. Prize Picks, of course, over 10 million members, billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on 2 players and up to 6 to win 1,000 times your cash. And remember, the big game almost here, and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the final football game of the season. And they're going to have a promotion, Prize Picks, where one of the quarterbacks in that big game, I can't say what it is, the big game, all he needs to do is throw for 1 yard. So you just combine that person, that player, with one other player, and you could win money. And that's a pretty cool thing. Just download the app. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And if you want to go to any games, and that's not just football, but obviously basketball, currently ongoing, NHL, concerts, whatever, use Game Time. It's the best. It's the easiest way to find tickets. They have a Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. On-time ticket delivery, lowest prices guaranteed, events cancellation protection, job loss protection, all those great things. So just download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create the account, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Let's move on to what's going on with the Jets. And again, it's now 6:12. Is Aaron Glenn still in the building?
Aaron Glenn is still in the building. I can tell you as of 3 minutes ago, Woody Johnson's helicopter left one Jets drive.
Oh.
Information you won't get anywhere else.
I like it.
Like it's going to get getting finalized. They're hammering out details. This, from people you talk to, it seems as though Mike Vrabel was option 1 and Aaron Glenn was 1B. And that's like, they interviewed all these candidates to say, can anybody wow us? Because they expected Glenn to win a title potentially this year. I don't think no one expected them to lose this weekend, maybe next. No. So I think the Jets were like, let's bide our time, interview people until we get our shot at Glenn to bring him in for a second interview. No one overly wowed them. I heard some names that of guys that did decently well in the interview process, but generally speaking, Glenn's been their guy. He kind of got the whole Vrabel deal that Vrabel was going to get. Lance Newmark, who's I think a decent candidate. I don't think he's like a little boring, and that's okay. He's by all accounts a good scout. Your very typical front office, scouting intern, area scout, college scout, direct, personnel director. The whole did the trip around the sun, 26 times. But the last 3 or 4 years has caught fire here with the new regime in Detroit. And then Washington, Adam Peters valued him highly enough to bring him with him as his number 2. And by all accounts, did some cool stuff with Jay Daniels with, virtual reality stuff. And he's big in analytics. Glenn's also a big analytics guy, as I found out doing some digging, with people in Detroit. So I think Glenn is like an A- and Newmark's like a C+, B-. I think it's more like a 90 and a 75 or whatever, if you were doing the number scale.
Yeah.
Glenn is the one thing I think that I am the most intrigued about Glenn is 2 things. One, he's not going to call plays, which is, to me, extremely important. I think, him being able to actually be the CEO type. This is a guy who's, to be fair to him, and I'm not trying to gas this higher up, he would have been a good hire for anybody. His coaching tree is Bill Parcells, who he talks to every week. And I know people will be like, oh, Bill's really old. Well, he played and learned under Bill in New York and played with him in Dallas and et cetera. Sean Payton, Dan Campbell, who all are, Parcells tree guys to some extent, I guess, right? That, through Sean Payton, you do the whole weave and whatever, but like pretty damn good trees to come from. Those are pretty successful guys and all in a different nature. Parcells defensively, but kind of the ultimate CEO type, probably the architect of any type of CEO. Like he's the OG CEO type hire.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what Glenn does from a hiring and staff perspective. A few names stand out that I think would be if the Jets go this route, I will be really impressed with the hire, not just like, hey, it's a good hire. It's a fun story. He's coming home. Clint Kubiak and Hank Fraley, if one of the 2 of those guys are your hire, and I know not everybody was impressed with that apparently when I tweeted that today.
I saw that.
But if that's one of those guys are the hire, Clint Kubiak, and there's some rumblings that Gary Kubiak would come in and be a senior kind of advisor on the staff. Now we're talking about something here. Now Clint has done a pretty nice job down in New Orleans in Minnesota with some quarterbacks I don't think either of us are particularly thrilled with, and Kirk and Derek Carr and the corpse of Taysom Hill. Clint's an interesting one. Fraley's the really interesting one to me. Offensive line coach in Detroit is on 2nd-round interviews. I've been told Seattle is pushing quite hard for him. He obviously, it's very rare you see an offensive line coach get the ultimate promotion, which is to be an offensive coordinator. That would be interesting because the Jets having a solidified offensive line coach, remember the days of Rex, and even under Parcells, those offensive line coaches were, they were legit. And that's like, those teams ran the football really well, et cetera. On the defensive side, the one name that has popped up and is Steve Wilks. People will scoff, oh, Steve Wilks sucks. I already hear it. I see what I mentioned. He was a really good interim head coach.
Yeah.
Probably should have gotten the job for all intents and purposes. That was a disaster with Reich when they let him go. San Francisco's the third best defense in the NFL last year. They're not the third best defense in the NFL this year at all. Steve is an outsider. I think he got scapegoated because Kyle choked in a big game again. Steve Wilkes, Clint Kubiak, or Hank Fraley, and I've seen they'll make a push for Darren Rizzi. I don't know what'll happen. He might get the Saints job now. Might go to Chicago, whatever it is. He is a Jersey guy. He recruited the McCourties at Rutgers and the whole thing. Like, he's Bergen Catholic through and through, like New Jersey blood. If we're starting to talk about that kind of staff, if you're Glenn, I don't worry about the fact he's a defensive guy anymore. You worry because of the idea he might, how is he going to approach quarterback and these other things? There's that. And then the one other thing I want to say on Glenn, that he's a scout. He started off in scouting before he got back into coaching. I think it was an area scout. Like, this is a dude who was on the road as a former first-round pick, Pro Bowl level player.
Yeah, wanted to learn it from the ground up.
Which is awesome. Aaron Glenn, I got one quote from a guy that I think you'll appreciate this. And I think a lot of Patriots fans would appreciate this from Mike Vrabel perspective, et cetera. It said, the country club days with the Jets are over. He's not like Robert Saleh, who tells you what you want to hear. He's going to tell you what you need to hear. That to me is a very, I don't know. That to me gets me excited. Mike, how do you feel about this potential?
No, look, if you're doing your deep dive on Aaron Glenn, I've done some digging on Aaron just because the name has come up so often over the last couple of years in terms of the kind of guy he is, the kind of leadership that he provides. And look, it's when you go from coordinator to head coach, there's no guarantee. We can't guarantee it's going to work. He's going into a market that at least he knows. He played there, understands how hungry fans are for a winner and how they'll hang on every word. So much like here in New England, when Gerard Mayo stepped in it, he got called on it. That's the same thing that will happen in New York. It's, that's how it works, right? But I think his background and the way he's worked himself up, I think he set himself up to have success. Of course, what it's going to still come down to is who's the OC, as you mentioned, the candidates there, and who's the quarterback. How quickly can you solve the quarterback problem? Because you can be a really good coach, and if you don't have, particularly at that position, but if you don't have the horses, period, it doesn't matter. You're going to wash out quickly, and we know the days of coaches getting 4 or 5 years to establish their program, it's rare. So he'll have to have success fairly quickly, I think. I don't know that Woody will continue to be as patient as he was with the previous regime. But I think it's the right guy. I think it's the right guy. They wanted Vrabel, as you talked about, couldn't get Vrabel. They move on to Glenn. Similar type approach, just doesn't have the head coaching experience, but has been in the game for a long time, was a player, can relate. And now it's who he puts around him will give him the best chance to put together a good, clean staff. The Fraley one is interesting to me, though. I will say this. I don't know that I love the idea
of him calling plays.
Yes. Scares the crap out of me.
Him calling plays, if they bring in Fraley,
they're going to need a high-level former OC/head coach offensive type guy to be with him.
I wonder – so 2 names, and we can, obviously talk more about this once it gets done, but 2 names that would be interesting on the Jaguar. I mean, not the Jaguar staff. The Jaguars likely to probably hire Liam Cohen, I'm sure, in the next 48 hours. Brian Schottenheimer potentially is the Cowboys coach. I cannot believe it.
I know. Crazy.
Pete Carroll potentially to Vegas. Obviously, we'll cover all those. The 2 names with interesting with the Lions. One, I think we'll go with Ben Johnson, which is Mark Brunell. I think he'll end up being the quarterback coach in Chicago. JT Barrett's really interesting to me. 29 years old, Ohio State product, was really good in college. Mm-hmm. Obviously was not an NFL quarterback. Got right into coaching, hopped right in 4 years ago, 5 years ago, tried play, wasn't sure what he wanted to do. Hopped around, and then the last 4 years has been with Detroit. He's the assistant quarterback coach and helps the pass game stuff. But been under Brunell, former quarterback himself. That to me, I'm interested if does Glenn bring him over and make him the quarterback coach and pass game coordinator, and then Fraley the run game coordinator, and and primary play caller, but have Barrett kind of be able to be like I'm going to handle the quarterback stuff. You just worry about you call plays and I'll help you with some of that stuff. That to me would be interesting. Again, I would prefer I'd prefer Clint Kubiak, who's called plays in multiple spots. His familiarity with some of the guys on the roster, and like again, the numbers under Kubiak, I couldn't believe these numbers. Mike, I'm curious, and we can wrap with this, but just out of curiosity, if I told you 26 games with Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr in 2 years as the Saints and Vikings OC, would you say over or under 30 touchdowns? 26 games.
Over.
48 touchdowns, 67% completion, 12 picks, 7.6 yards per attempt. And I think both those guys might stink. So again, I'm not trying to overhype him that he's going to be, but if you told me you get Gary and Clint in here with likely a young quarterback or two over the next 12 months, and Aaron can just worry about like media, he's going to have to be heavily involved in the front office, man. Like this is going to be, if Glenn's a home run higher, this will be awesome for the Jets. And if he's only okay, I don't know if it's going to work just because it's kind of all on him. It's similar with Vrabel in New England. Like, I don't know, man. Like Ryan Cowden's like not really that impressive. He's more impressive because he's Mike Vrabel's buddy, and Mike Vrabel's awesome. Like that's what it kind of comes down to. That's what like my only worry, I guess.
Well, this would be where, and just to finish up, going back to McDaniels quickly, this would be where having someone like McDaniels who's run an offense for freaking 20 years
helps.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I don't expect the relationship with Vrabel and McDaniels to be similar to what it was with Belichick and McDaniels at the end. But like Bill would turn his back on the offense and go talk to positional players on defense, gather the group together and talk to him for 3-4 minutes. He's not even watching the game. Because why? Because he had Josh. And this happened when it was Cam Newton and Mac Jones as the quarterbacks, not even when it was Tom Brady. You can understand, hey, I trust Tom and Josh. They'll figure this out. But even when he had other guys, he would still – I got full faith that he's the, again, the joke here was the Alex Van Pelt head coach offense. Well, that essentially is what Josh would be, or at least give him the option to be here, where Mike can be more involved in the defensive side of the ball and being the CEO type. So, very interesting times. I'm sure you will have, if the news comes down, an emergency pod.
For a good, interesting one. 3 guys got elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame just now.
Oh, yeah. Ichiro.
1 vote short of unanimous, the same as Derek Jeter. I wonder which city that one was from. Billy Wagner, which weird. And lastly, one I'm excited about, CC Sabathia. And this is obviously totally off topic. Can we get Bonds and Schilling and I am maybe not Schilling, Bonds and Clemens and A-Rod in? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. We'll end on this very thought. I think as the older guard of professional baseball writers retire,
you could see it,
and the younger guard comes in, the younger guard's just going to look at it like they don't protect the game in the same way. I mean, it's not to say that they don't, but it's like, look, man, there's a whole era of baseball that you're ignoring, and not the old everyone was doing it, but yes, everyone was doing it. So you're just going to pretend that those 15 or 20 years didn't happen is kind of foolish. And baseball certainly, if you want to dig deeper, baseball certainly didn't exactly dissuade players from juicing up. So anyway, that's going to,
but whatever.
That's going to put a wrap on this. For those of you who are Jets fans, we'll have something on one of his other pods should the Aaron Glenn news come down. And, of course, we will still be here at the end of the week or earlier if more crazy things happen during the course of the day. But it appears that Aaron Glenn is going to be the Jets' next head coach. All right, he is Will Parkinson. I am Mike Giardi. We're out. See ya.